It's all yours, brother, for the next 45 minutes. Tim, come on in. You want me to unmute you? You're muted, buddy.
Heard that.
There you go. Perfect.
All right, man. Thank you, Eric.
You got it.
Love you, brother. Thank you so much. I want to thank you, man, for asking me to be in service. As always, man, I love you dearly. And you know, anytime Alcoholics Anonymous asks me to do something, I'm so honored that I can be a part of this fellowship. Especially you, brother, man. You're right. You just clicked right away. It's interesting in this fellowship where you can meet somebody and in 45 minutes you can think, man, I've known him my whole life. And that's happened to me many times, and I appreciate. I was listening to the music of the meeting before the meeting, everybody talking to each other, and Eric had said enthusiasm, and I felt that there's so much enthusiasm in this group here. I feel, and enthusiasm is Greek for entheos, meaning the God within. So when you're enthusiastic about something, whatever it is, that is just a manifestation of the presence of God in your life. And I'm very enthusiastic about Alcoholics Anonymous as well, and what it's done to me. And I could never pay back the principle or the interest on the principle of what this program has done for me. So um, I thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. And Eric asked me how I was doing, and I said that I'm blessed by the best despite all my mess. And this is something I was taught when I first walked in the program, and I was a mess, y'all. But before I go into that, I'll do some general housekeeping. My name is Tim. I'm an alcoholic. I'm grateful to be here, and I am my sobriety date is August 1st, 2017. And I have a home group, Solution Seekers in Horsham on 611 the Meeting House Road, Pennsylvania. So if you're ever out that way, we'd love to have you. We'd love to meet new family members. I have several commitments there. I have a sponsor. His name is Mark P. He is an absolute gift from God. It's amazing how God is a great choreographer. I met him the first week I was in AA. And he was the one who was supposed to send me the message. And I'm also a sponsor. I've been through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous a few times. I have currently I'm sponsoring a handful of men. That is the highlight of my life. It says in the big book it talks about the bright spots of our life, and that's really true. Um, God writes straight and crooked lines the way he writes, and how I got here. I don't know how, if I think about how I'm sitting in this chair with all of you right now, and how I got here, I'm considering how hard I drank and how hard I used drugs. I'm eternally grateful for this fellowship as well as God for what he has done. It's the force of the spirit that got me here. So what I was like, I was a child. I want what I want when I want it. That's how I lived for a long, long, long time. I won't go too hard in the Drunkalog, but Dr. Silkworth was quoted as saying that alcoholism is an obsession of the mind that condemns one to drink, and an allergy of the body that condemns one to die. And I remember I was in 2001. I was just to qualify here. I had been up for 2 days, and I just tried to commit suicide. Um, I came home and I just took everything I could get my hands on. Weird. I wanted to commit suicide, but I didn't want to hurt myself in the process, right? And I just took it too far. I found myself in the hospital. I woke up, not remembering anything, and I looked over in the hospital, and I saw my mom leaning down, like right at my, like, she was leaning right next to me, and I saw that face. That face that your loved ones give you, that's filled with confusion and pain and like anger and fear. I saw that in my mom's eyes. I saw that. I'll never forget this. And the reason why I'm saying this is because this was 2001. And I just got done mentioning that I had gotten sober in 2017. And it did not get better, my friends. And I remember when she asked me, she's like, Tim, when are you going to stop? And when are you going to stop, man? And there's a line in the book, which I love. It's occasionally becomes the truth. And I said, I can't. I can't stop because I've never had two beers. You go in for one and you stay till two. That was me. I never had two beers in my life. I never had two anything in my life.
Hey, Tim, could you speak up just a little bit louder?
Yeah, sure,
All
man.
right, there we go.
Sorry, I'm a
Thank you.
very light talker. So,
Yeah, just a little bit louder. Then because some people are having a hard time.
yeah, man, no problem. Sorry about that. I'll turn it up. So again, the weakness of humility is God's greatest strength. And God's grace is made perfect in my weakness. And I drank and I drank and I drank, and I found myself one day, and I was circling the drain. I was circling the drain, and I had reached a point where there was nothing left that I had in the tank. I had no ammunition. I had no arrows in my quiver. I had nothing left. I had drank myself, and I remember being on. I don't know if you guys ever done this before. When I would go into the bathroom, and I would look into the mirror, and I would, I was probably like a buck 60 back then, and I'm just crying, and I'm just crying my eyes out, and I don't recognize what I see, right? I just don't see what I see, and I'm crying, and I asked that question that I've asked myself my whole life, and I said, what is wrong with me? Like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I stop, man? And I remember going back into my little dingy apartment, and I did this soul cry, like this something that came over me, and I hit my knees and I looked up. And they say you fall up, right? You don't fall down, you fall up. But God shreds you down to nothing. Like He shred me down to nothing so He can build me up. Because in that moment, I felt something. I felt something that I've never felt before. That it wasn't words, but it was an experience in my heart. It wasn't a white light experience, but it was just something subtle that said, Tim, it's gonna be okay, man. I got you, but there's a lot of work to do. And they say the mouth speaks of what the heart is full of. And in that moment, I remember feeling so grateful. I felt forgiveness. I felt as if I was forgiven in that moment. Um, and I found myself getting up, going into a room of Alcoholics Anonymous, which I've never been into before. I've fought this my whole life. And I found myself walking into EAM, which is in Lansdale. It's Expect a Miracle Group. And I found myself, and I walked in, and I saw, in the first edition, the board, the first word is we, right? And I was always taught that the we always has to change, right? In other words, when I walked into EAM, that first meeting that I saw, the first person that came up to me, right, was the first we that I knew anything about Alcoholics Anonymous. The first person that just came up to me with this little tiny light in all this darkness. And the person came up to me and he just smiled at me. And there was just something about just that human kindness. And I started seeing other people in the rooms that were awake, like it was in their eyes. It was like in the solar plexus. It was, you were awake and you were alive and you were happy and you were hugging each other and you were talking to each other in a way that I've never experienced before. I didn't expect any of this. And the first we was that person that just said, hello, welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. And he introduced myself, and he started to introduce me to other people. And now the we's changing again. Now I'm starting to get introduced to a fellowship. Okay. The spirit of the fellowship, right? And now I'm getting introduced to them. And then at the end of the meeting, I raised my, at the beginning of the meeting, I raised my hand. I'm new to the meeting, first time here, first time in AA. And at the end of that meeting, I met my sponsor and he came up to me. He's like, look, like you could use a big book, man. And he handed me a big book. And now the we changed again. Now we started working through the steps, and you never know who you are until you shed who you pretend to be. And I remember feeling like what started happening was that we started going through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and we were knee to knee together, right? And we started going over this book, the black print on the white page and the blue book, and he started going over it, and what happened was because I started, experiencing what the steps do, I ran into the first person. The first person I ran into was me, and it was not a good day, y'all. It was not a good day, and I realized how desperate I was. And I thought my whole life I was taught that my desires, like freedom, is the freedom of the freedom is the pursuit of your desires. And what I experienced was actually it was the freedom from my desires, right? And that freedom is on the other side of discipline, right? And my sponsor always told me the freedom that you're looking for, man, is in the work that you're avoiding. Because I was avoiding it, right? Defiance is an outstanding characteristic of many of alcoholics, right? And I was defiant. It was going against everything I've ever done. Acts against the will, contrary to the way I've lived my life. Um, and he also taught me that he said, Tim, the reason why you're closed minded is because your mouth is always open. I'll never forget that. Because what he would do, he would give me this like shot of truth, but with the antiseptic of love. And it always followed that. And that's kind of what God does for me, right? He gives you that hit. Because what's happening in these steps, as I'm going through the steps, as I'm coming to believe in something bigger than myself, as I'm turning my will and my life over to the care of God, right? Which is my will is my actions, or excuse me, my life is my actions, and my will is my thought life. He's cooking out of me the truth. Like I'm starting to see myself for who I really am. And I'm selfish, and I'm self-centered, and I'm egocentric, and I'm playing God. And it doesn't work really well. I have pages and pages and pages of inventory of people that I've harmed, and there's not one person on that harms list that I ever tried to hurt. It's just if you're within breathing distance from me, you're going to get the shrapnel, and the blood on the floor is not mine. It's yours, man. You know, and we'll never know what God is willing to do for us until we're in a situation that only God can do for us. That only God can do it for us, man. And he was coming into my life, man. You guys, he was coming into my heart. I started to start. You ever go to a meeting? You start going to meetings and then someone doesn't show up one day and I don't really know who they are, but I start caring about them. Right? Where's John? He's not here today. I don't even know John, but I know he's usually here every day, and now he's not here, and I would get upset about it because I started to find this. I started in Hinduism they say that it's namaste, right? And when you say namaste to each other, it means that the God in me sees the God in you, and I started seeing the God in people, right? In the beginning, I didn't feel like welcomed in AA because again, my head is telling me that I'm different or whatever it is that my head tells me, right? The misuse of the imagination. And my sponsor did an interesting thing for me. He said, well, Tim, you don't feel welcome. Why don't you, when someone comes into the meeting and you don't recognize them and you don't know who they are, just go up to them, introduce them to the meeting, right? I've had like maybe 60 days at this point, 30, 60 days. And he said, introduce them into the meeting and let them know, when the meetings are, where the bathroom is, here's the coffee, here's the literature, here's my number. And what happened was, as I started to introduce myself and introduce newcomers into the meeting, even though I'm one myself, a very interesting thing started to happen, and I started to feel welcome because I was giving it away, right? It's like the St. Francis prayer. If you want forgiveness, you got to give forgiveness away first, right? Where there's dark, you bring light, right? Where there's discord, you bring harmony, right? If you want something, you give it away first. And that started changing me because when I started to introduce myself and introduce newcomers into the meeting, I started feeling welcome myself. I started feeling like I belong to you. I started feeling as if that something I've, because I always had this ethos of a better than or less than, right? This is better than, or that's better than, or she's better than, or it's better than, or the job's better than, or it's less than. And what happens is when you're on better than or less than ethos, is you're never a part of anything. And I was always separate. And that's what the alcoholism always did, was always trying to separate me from God and from you by my judgment, by my opinion, by my old thinking. And I started having an experience with all of you as I'm going through the steps, as I'm taking this awakened spirit, it's awakening up into the world and into the meetings. And I started to have connection for the first time in my life, real connection, because you guys taught me about when someone asks me how you doing, they really mean how are you doing. They really want to know what's going on with you. And I started gaining what is called patience, which I never had before. They say patience is it's a long soul. It's like having a long soul. Right? It's kind of like when I'm impatient, I have a short fuse. But if you're patient, you have a long fuse. Right? And I started experiencing that through prayer. As I was praying to God, I was opening up these spiritual pathways. The best worship is just acknowledgement of God's greatness and his goodness. And he started penetrating through my heart. His spirit started penetrating to me. And he started to, which I thought at the time, that there was nobody in my life. Everyone was gone. But what he does is it wasn't punishment, it was repositioning. He was saying, Tim, I need you here. As I'm going through the steps, this is the relationship I need you to be. I need you to be here with me. And all those people are gone right now because it would be a distraction for you. So it was a very interesting experience of thinking that when I was going through this, that I was alone. But what God was doing was he was changing the posture in my heart for a new direction, a new opportunity. Sometimes God, sends you to prison to get you free. That's exactly my experience. It's all paradoxical. And I started learning how to give love to somebody, and love is given, in spite of what you feel, you give them love, right? It's fighting for the good in somebody, right? Even if they don't see the value or the sacrifice, right? That you did to give them that love. Because I started helping people pretty early, because my sponsor said AA is about God and helping people. It's about working these steps line for line in the big book. We go through it. We don't get creative. When it says to pray, we pray. When it tells us to write stuff down, we write stuff down. Right? Kind of a fundamentalist, I guess you would say, in the big book, which I love, and it's changed my life in so many different ways. And so as I was going through this process, I was experiencing the love of God in my heart, because I deliberately manufactured misery in my own life. And what I was allowed to do, or what was coming to me, was I was learning how to cheerfully allow God to demonstrate his omnipotence in my life. His power, his love started to come within me. Just from doing the steps, just from taking direction, right? Humility isn't thinking less of yourself. It's not thinking less of yourself. It's not thinking less of yourself, right? And because my suffering is just all that resistance in my head, right? Like if I'm suffering, I'm just resisting something. And I would resist and I would resist. So my sponsor said, dude, just drop the story. It's a great spiritual practice. Just drop the story, man. Whatever you got going on in your head, it isn't true. It's trying to lie to you. It's trying to get you away from God. It's trying to get you away from who will try to help you. Always, it's always about the separation. Chuck Chamberlain will talk about that. We have one problem that spawns every problem we have, and it's a conscious separation from God. I'm just consciously separated from God. So we need a contact. We need a conscious contact. And again, it's just the alcoholism has started to shed some of those pounds. I started to experience what real relationships are. I started to experience the love of God in my heart through helping others, through self-sacrifice, through it's called divine inconvenience, right? If I'm doing AA and it's fitting like perfectly in my schedule, I'm probably doing it wrong. I was taught it's divine alignment, not personal convenience. Because God will posture your heart. If you go out of your way, doing things that aren't convenient, that are not in my time zone, because God has no clock. And I started finding myself doing things against my will. And by doing that, again, God's greatest strength, that humility is his greatest strength by showing him that. And I started going through amends, and I will say that the amends process is something that I'll share one story. There was a friend of mine that I'm a musician, I'm a writer. God had given me a creative soul, I've worked for record labels and producers, and I write songs for a living, which is amazing. My grandfather always says that you know, music is for the listener, but the first listener is the player. So there's this responsibility. And when I got sober, I didn't know what to do with all the gifts that God had given me. And I said, God, I'm praying for you, man. I'm just going to start playing for you. I'm going to stop trying to be a rock star or whatever it is, what I was trying to do. And I'm just going to utilize whatever gifts you have. And I had no idea what I was going to do musically. Well, I made an amends to a friend of mine that I had played in a band with when I was 27 years old. And, and he, he, I, when I got sober, he was on my list. He wanted me to play in a band, and I said, yeah, man. And I didn't show up for rehearsal. I just totally blew him off, and ended up being actually a really big band. So, at fast forward 20 something years later, and I sent an email out to him. Didn't go to him. It was the wrong email. A year later, I'm about 2 years now. It's Friday. I'm at Chick-fil-A on my way to a session, and he pulls up right next to me. I see it's Brian. I'm like, Brian. They call me Soup because my last name's Campbell, and everyone would call me Soup. I'm like, hey, man. And we hugged. It was an awesome experience. We just embraced. I made the amends there, and I asked him the question, what can I do to make it right? He said, hey, man, I need some percussion at church. We're opening up, I'm doing this contemporary worship team, and I just need some percussion, play djembe, which is a little African drum, maybe like once a month. And I said, man, no problem. I got you. That I never did that before. Anything about that stuff. I walked into that church and I got hugged right away. Once a month, I played this djembe for about a year. I'm just volunteering. They found out I played other instruments, and I started playing piano as well. And then fast forward, now it's been 6 years. They just made me the music director to the whole program, just by saying, which I never ever intended to do, ever. And all my family members come to this church. We've all been united through these steps. I've had guys that I work with in the fellowship, guys I sponsor, come to this church. I've had friends come. That's changed their relationships with their God. It's amazing what can happen by saying, what can I do to make it right? And the relationship, that's just one amend. I could sit here for hours and talk about what's transpired through the love of God, because he writes a better story. I just got to stop trying to steal the pen from him. He writes a better story. I got to stop trying to steal the pen from him. And then prayer and meditation. I pray an hour every day. I get up very early to do that, just so I can sit with God and be with him. That's not how it started, but I pray for every single person that I know. It takes a long time. I pray for the peace. I believe that time in the morning is the great upon awakening. I don't do anything else. I don't get 4 Red Bulls later. It's like right away you get up and I hit my knees. Are you getting up for God? My sponsor always said, because we get up for work, right? He's like, are you getting up for your money? Or are you getting up for God? And I had to think about that, and I never thought of it that way, so I started getting up for God. That's why I'm waking up today. I woke up today. I did an hour of prayer and meditation, depends on what goes on. And it's just about the destination that I am here. I am here, Father. It's not about so he can hear me. It's just so I can be centered with him. I'm here for you, Father. And what an experience. I love prayer and meditation. But the real joy that's come out of this experience is sitting with another alcoholic one-on-one. There's nothing that I've ever experienced than watching God work through others and work through their lives, shine through them and reflect their light on others. There's nothing like it. It really isn't. It's. I had the opportunity. I did it twice today. I had 2 people that I sponsored, or this afternoon after I was here, and I'm just floating, man. To see their eyes just light up, to see God, to see the relationships, to see them be reunited with their children, things like that. But more importantly, that they're out there helping others too. They're signing up and they're excited and they're amped about it and they're enthusiastic, right? And yeah, beyond my wildest dreams. I could go on, but I'm just so grateful for this fellowship. I'm so grateful to people in it. I'm so grateful that I get for the downward spiral, and I'm so grateful for this journey that I'm on that I can share with all of you. And I think that's all I have. So thank you for letting me share tonight.